All right, good evening. Thanks for joining us. We'll be admitting people in from the waiting room as they appear. As a reminder, this is the Helen MacGregor Plaza community meeting hosted in partnership with UCSF Benioff Children's Hospitals, City of Oakland, Santa Fe CAN, and the Longfellow Community Association with Councilmember Dan Kalb in attendance. And to our new guest, we have Bay Tree Design Services, who are the landscape architects that will be coming on board to help us bring this into a consensus design. But how about we sit tight for just a couple more minutes as we wait for people to trickle in, and then we can get started shortly. Thanks, everyone. Hi, for those who have joined, this is the Helen MacGregor Plaza community meeting. We are hopefully going to get started here in the next minute or so as we're waiting for other neighbors to trickle in and join us on this Zoom meeting. I'm Abby Ellis with UCSF Benioff Children's Hospitals. We will do a bigger round of introductions once we have more people on the call with us. All right, well, it's almost 6:05, so I think we should go ahead and get started, and then people can join us as we are going around. Lisa, do you want to pull up the presentation? Oh, perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. Like I said earlier, I'm Abby Ellis from UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this meeting to talk about the City of Oakland's Helen MacGregor Plaza and how our institution, the Santa Fe CAN, Longfellow Community Association, and Councilmember Dan Kalb's office are coming together to explore opportunities for how we revitalize this plaza. We're thrilled that Bay Tree Design has joined us in this effort, and they're going to be running this presentation and show. But first, we want to do a brief round of introductions since we have some new people at the table, and also introduce the team. So could you go to the next slide? Perfect. Okay, so we'll start with team introductions, and then Councilmember Kalb will provide us with some opening remarks, and then Liz Epstein from UCSF will give a little background on why we are all here and how this project came to be, and then we'll really get into some design work and review from Bay Tree. Next. Oh, actually, I'll stay here. So if this is the agenda, let's do some introductions. I'm Abby Ellis. I have said that enough times now. I will hand it over to Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Epstein with the hospital, and happy to be here and happy to see you all.
And Paul?
Paul Takayama, Assistant Vice Chancellor, Community Government Relations, UCSF Benioff Children's Hospitals.
Great, thank you. And then the Bay Tree team, Lisa?
Sure. My name is Lisa Howard. I'm the principal from Bay Tree Design. I'm an urban designer and landscape architect. Happy to be working with you guys on this project. Hand it over to Aurora.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Aurora de Velay. I am a landscape architect and an associate at Bay Tree Design. I'll give it to Willa.
Hi, I'm Willa Coey, and I'm an associate at Bay Tree Design. happy to work on this.
Great, thank you. And so with that, Paul, do you want to introduce Councilmember Kalb?
Sure. So happy to introduce Oakland City Councilman Dan Gelb. And Dan, you want to provide some opening remarks?
Sure, thank you. And thanks so much to Children's Hospital for helping move this forward over the recent years, and to all the community members who are also been engaging in this. This first started a few years back, a number of years back, even prior to when UCSF affiliated with Children's Hospital, when Children's Hospital was moving forward with its development, upgrading and modernization. And we all know we have an important, relatively small, but still very important mini park or plaza very close to Children's Hospital, adjacent to or part of the Santa Fe neighborhood, adjacent to the Longfellow neighborhood. And every once in a while, there's an opportunity to have the community be directly engaged in kind of revisioning and looking at to see how a park or a plaza or this mini park, if you will, can be more functional and more inviting for people in and nearby the neighborhood. So this is an opportunity. I would caution everybody to not think too grandiose, because that might make things way too expensive and not achievable. But we do have an opportunity to make some modifications over time, and I think it's absolutely critical that those people who live nearby or work nearby are part of this process. And so that's why we're having this meeting tonight, as well as the previous meetings. My staff, Deidre, has been engaged in this as well, and I look forward to seeing how this comes out and what the results will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kalb. Can we pull up the slide deck again? Great. Again, I'm Liz Epstein with the hospital, and I know that some of you have been part of prior meetings and are aware of the history, but I just want to make sure that everybody who might be new to this has an understanding of what the context is and the work that's been done to date. So back in 2015, when the hospital put forward its master plan, the city asked the hospital to initiate a community design process to refresh this plaza. And at that time, there was a neighborhood survey that was conducted, and a number of meetings to gather input and hear people's hopes and desires for that space. And at that time, that information was then fed into a design process with a different landscape architect who generated some sort of conceptual approaches that embodied the input that had been gathered at that point. We brought those two designs back to the community in June, and I think some of you were at those, I know some of you were at that meeting, and invited further feedback, and invited people to even vote and express their preferences. And at this point, we've now engaged Bay Tree Design to take the input that's been gathered to date and to take us to the next step of developing the ideas, the uses, the treatment of the plaza itself. If you could go to the next slide. This is just an illustration of what that process has been. So the first phase is the initial gathering of information and visioning sessions. And then in this current year, we again engaged in a further iteration of that design development, and you can see where we are now in the community process. So we have this meeting, and we expect that we will take the information that's gathered tonight, and that Bay Tree will do some thoughtful creative work with that, and we'll come back to the community in March. And we expect that again, we will hear input and ideas and then come back in May. And our hope is that at that point that we will have a consensus design that is responsive to people's desires and interests. Thanks.
All right.
Lauren.
Aurora,
Aurora, sorry.
are you on, Aurora?
Yes. Okay. All right. So the goal of this meeting is, as Liz said, is to build upon the 2015 proposed design and bring it forward to the present. So what we're going to do right now is take a look at the design schemes that were proposed back in 2015, as well as all the community input that has been gathered since then. And then we will briefly talk about what makes a successful and welcoming plaza before we study the site and the neighborhood's cultural history. So next slide, please. All right, so back in 2015, when the first survey was conducted about community members, a number of different areas were, a number of questions were asked about different areas and how the neighbors felt about the plaza and the neighborhood. And then what is it, like 6 years later, a new consensus process was created. And then the neighbors' priorities, we may see they may have shifted a little bit. I mean, there's been a lot of social changes recently, especially with the global pandemic, and it has had different outcomes. Let's see the next slide. So at Bay3 Design, we have been studying both surveys, and we collected all of the community input that was created. And then we made this list of top priorities. So we can see that traffic calming solutions and pedestrian safety were the #1 concern among neighbors and users of the plaza. And then next, we have acknowledging the cultural history. Making it part of the final design and building maybe a sense of identity was a really big demand. And finally, overall safety was the third biggest element of concern. And then to the right side, we can see we listed the other items that came up from the survey. Next slide. All right, so now let's take a look at both design schemes from 2015. So concept 1 key features were a stone circle that served as a focal point with seating and play elements. And then we also had an ornamental fence along MLK for safety. Many new colorful trees were proposed to be planted, and then also synthetic play surfacing. Concept 2, on the other hand, included a labyrinth with inspirational words and quotes, and then it was surrounded with seating rocks, and then some native flowering trees. So we can see that both schemes also feature some sort of neighborhood identity signage, and they also both address traffic calming solutions like bulb outs and raised cross tables. Next slide, please. All right, so now I will let Lisa go over the presentation of the site analysis.
Okay, before I hop into the presentation, I just want to thank everybody for taking their time to attend tonight, and remind everybody that what we're going to look at right now is the urban design and landscape design aspects of the site, and that will be our first breakout room, like Abby went over in the agenda. And then we're going to talk about the history and the cultural identity of the neighborhood in a second one. So I'm just going to focus on the design pieces now. And just like Council Member Calb said, we want to make this plaza inviting. We want to make it welcoming. We want it to be realistic. So as we go through, we can talk about that. But since 2015, building on the other plans, we've had a little bit of ways that we can address the 3 top concerns or desires of the community. West Street improvements have been done, and you can see on the screen, this is the plan for West Street, which runs here, and this triangle here is the plaza. And we're going to be seeing crosswalks in this intersection, as well as some bike lanes, which might bring some traffic over to, bicycle traffic to the plaza, which would be nice. What's potentially happening with the city in 2022 is repaving 52nd Street along here and MLK. So one thing that we've been talking about is, are there any opportunities that we can kind of integrate with those projects so that we can really address the auto dominant sort of pedestrian balance piece by using and jumping into other projects so it's not part of this project budget. So some questions there. In terms of the community and the history, more people are working remotely now. Do those people want to pull out of their home office, get a coffee, come over here? What are some ways that we can start to pull people into this space? And then how do we make it safe? The neighborhood really was addressing like the safety, but make it safe and welcoming. A plaza or a mini park, whatever we want it to be, isn't really a real community space unless people want to be in it. So that's really is the crux of this question: what makes it successful space? A place where you want to go and you want to stay. These are questions and ideas that as urban designers, landscape architects, we talk about. We look at like, where are people walking from? Typically it's a quarter mile from your house at the most. And what would people want to see? What would make you go to that space? You know, a play area, coffee, a place to sit, something else. How can we work off the pedestrian and bike circulation patterns like on 52nd? This whole relationship to the street, which we'll get into. And then these are really key and these are more nuanced. But how do we make the space feel comfortable? So if it's cold out, do we want a place to be in the sun? If it's hot out, do we want a place in the shade? Is there a place where I can sit, be by myself, or do I want to be in a group? So these are nuances that we want to be talking about and thinking about when we're in the breakout rooms. So going back to the first thread, auto dominance, Aurora and I sat at the site for about 45 minutes and two groups of people walked by, but they didn't stop. And really what we were identifying is that it just feels very dominated by autos. 52nd Street's really wide. If it was narrower, you know, it wouldn't feel like a big stretch to cross it. There's a lot of oncoming traffic on MLK that just kind of keeps coming at you, and the BART train is really loud. So this is Helen MacGregor here. The Helen MacGregor Plaza, and you can see there's, you know, MLK, West Street. So we've got a lot going on in terms of traffic, but we also have all these neighborhoods that are denoted in these different colors. This is zooming in on it. While we were sitting here, here's West Street, 52nd and MLK, and these lines are telling you like there's cars and trucks. We couldn't get the numbers on those, but the BART comes by over 210 times a day or so. So it adds a lot of noise to the space. But Aurora was saying this is an island the way this is now, but it could feel like a peninsula. And if it felt like a peninsula, would it be more attractive to you? Is a question I have for you guys tonight. You know, Oakland has the slow streets they're doing during the pandemic. Could we just test this one block out as a slow street? So if you live here, you can access it. But if you're visiting the park, there's not tons of traffic going on this side of the plaza. So thinking about the auto dominance, we've just got some questions. You know, what happens if we were to take the bus stop and move it up here so that there's sort of the separation between the oncoming traffic and the area where you'd want to hang out? Is there a buffer or something that we can put that has community identity, but it's at an auto scale? So if I'm driving by and I'm not from the neighborhood, I can look at that and be like, oh, there's the Helen MacGregor Plaza. I really know what that space is and it's really cool. You know, could we consider diagonal crosswalks like in downtown San Francisco? So if somebody's on their break at the hospital or a visitor, they don't have to cross two ways and under BART tracks, but just one quick crosswalk. So just figuring out ways to get people to the site and then want to be in the site. Looking at the history in the community, which was the second desire of the community, and you can see Bushrod, Santa Fe, Longfellow, and this is the quarter-mile walking distance, and then the hospital and the church, and here's the site. We looked at the census data, and it was interesting to see that most people in this neighborhood are young to middle-aged adults. So is that something that influences the types of uses that are in the space? We also looked at the local parks and what was in the parks nearby. And you can see them here. So that it just asks the question, you know, how do we reflect the history in the community? What are the uses we want? One thing that is always like a key piece that you put into a plaza or a park that doesn't really have a lot of people is food. Food attracts people, people attract people, and then you start to have people in the space and it feels welcome and safe. So what if there was a food truck or a coffee cart that was someone's business and it wasn't something that we paid for, but a business that wanted to be there because people were coming to buy coffee from them or buy food from them? Is there some sort of other community identity that we want to have in this plaza? Is it the labyrinth that is in the Carducci design or the other plan? Is there something we want along this edge again that's community identity? So that's sort of the community history piece. And then it gets back, and then we are looking at the safe and welcoming. So looking at the site, it's all got this very dense shade. There's really only one place to sit. The sidewalks don't always connect with the plaza, which usually you have a seamless connection so that you can kind of go in and out. So this is looking at it in plan. So here's 52nd. King. These are the BART tracks, and then west. And this is the only place to sit in the plaza, and it's really one room. So if we go back to like the nuances, like are there a variety of places to sit? Are there other rooms? Here's where the urban noise is. Here's the lighting. We want to bring some lighting into the site. So these are things we want to think about. How do we make it safe and welcoming? Aurora did a shade analysis, summer, spring and fall and winter. And you can see, here's the hospital, here's the church. So 52nd West, that in the winter you get, or in the summer, you get a little sun at the seats and that's it. But in the spring and fall, it's all shaded. And then the winter, this is shaded, but this is sunny. So just thinking about, you know, that comfort level. And then here's the trees, and your facilitator in your breakout room will have these images so you can look back at them if you want. So, you know, what are ways that we can make this space feel comfortable and welcoming? Do we want more places to sit? That's what these little blue sort of diagram bubbles are. Do we want to keep all the trees, or do we want to take a few out so we have places where it's sunny? Is there something else that would make it feel welcoming to you? So think about that. So that's really the presentation. We're going to go into breakout group 1. Councilmember Cal will be coming and visiting you. I might come and visit you and check in, but just go through the questions that we have, and your facilitator has these. We really want to hear from everybody. What are the sites? What do you want in the plaza? What makes you comfortable in terms of the traffic? What makes you feel safe and comfortable in terms of wanting to be in the space and stay in the space? And is there anything else that's design related? Remember, this is the design questions, and then we're going to jump into the history stuff after this breakout group. So we'll see everybody in a half an hour. Abby's going to break us up into our groups. And when we come back, we want to hear everybody's summary of their discussions. That's it. Do we need one more breakout group, Abby?
I think we're actually good. Oh, oops, I accidentally assigned you to a room.
Me?
Never mind, I was moving too quickly. Yeah, you can decline that. So it should be, hold on, all of us are still here unassigned. I did assign Paul as well, but it looks like the most of the rooms are in the 5 to 6 person range. So we should be
That's
good.
great.
Yeah.
So we actually went fast. I was looking at the agenda. We should have gotten to breakout session at 6:30 and it was 6:25. So we can see how the breakout rooms are going, and we can either give them 5 extra minutes, or we can like just, you know, cut it. Like sometimes people run out of things to talk about, and then one group will keep talking and another won't. So we can kind of, if I'm bouncing around, I can keep track of that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I made one room a little, yeah, one has, oh, there we go. Yeah, there are around 6 to 7 people in a room.
That sounds great.
Perfect. Okay, that worked out.
How many
Phew.
people actually showed up?
25 people
Okay.
total, including all of us, you know, Bay Tree and UCSF individuals as well. Here, I'm going to pause recording.
Is that everybody?
I think we have a few people still in some of the rooms. Let's see
Here we go.
here.
Getting more.
Yeah, we're getting close. I think just a couple more seconds and everybody will be back. All right.
Well, I don't know about others, but I hopped around from room to room and I heard a lot of wonderful conversations. So for the next 10 minutes, what we'd like to do is give each group, you should have somebody in your group to summarize in like 1 to 2 minutes, like maybe 3 key pieces that came out of the discussion you had so that everybody kind of has an idea of what was being said in each of the groups. So if breakout 1 wants to start, who's going to present?
I'm happy to talk. If Aurora, you want to share your screen, that could be great. Overall, everyone, let me just put it this way, everyone wants a coffee cart. Is the main thing, but you know, the coffee cart just being an anchor for people walking into the space, for safety, because that not only is that vendor there, but it brings so many more people into the space. A play area, a small play area, something that wasn't, you know, just a massive slide, but something that again brings more people into the space, and is a place for children and also parents, because it's very helpful for the parents to have a space to take their other children and be outside for a little while. Farm stand is also in there with just a couple of vendors. Again, we're thinking small. Something like a water feature, or again, a small fountain, is very calming and does bring a sense of meditation to the space, which we found very useful, again, for perhaps people who are working at Children's Hospital, parents and siblings in the area or from Children's Hospital. It just is it's such a calming presence that could be helpful for everyone. I think we all agreed multiple tables and different spaces for different groups to sit, again, bringing a number of people into the space. We'll go to the next one and I'll talk like an auctioneer just to get this out of the way. Everyone in our group agreed all of the traffic calming solutions we can do, let's do them. There is no one said we need more, you know, this is too much. Also agreed that most of these stop signs around here, people treat them as stoptional. So if there's whatever we can do to get people to actually stop, if that's crosswalks, if that's visual, if the streets are narrower, that is wonderful. And feeling safe and comfortable in the space, definitely bringing more people into the space. Lighting kept coming up. Even right now, even during the day, it feels dark in that space is important. Garbage cans and regular cleaning maintenance. You know, this had been in disrepair, but also often people would dump their couches there. So just making sure that if we do something really nice, that it isn't just falling into disrepair quickly. Keeping the space busy, again, audio, keeping the traffic down, perhaps with something like a water feature would be great. Maintaining clear lines of sight. And that doesn't mean that the space is completely open, but it just doesn't feel like it's very enclosed. And also for children, if people are bringing their children into the space, having something in the perimeter, perhaps not just on MLK, but something like low shrubs, so that it just doesn't encourage people to run. Also West Street, everyone agreed, West Street, keeping, if that's a pedestrian way, if that's a slow street, whatever we can do to, again, Lisa, as you said, make that feel more like a peninsula than an island. Also talking about working with the Church of Good Shepherd, right? They do even bringing some of their music into the space, if they'd be open to that, bringing anything into the space that they do with something like a small stage. We know that they do, I think they do a weekly pack lunch, having something like a once a week booth for unhoused neighbors as well. Just to really, again, bring more people into that space and be helpful and really acknowledge that that space has been used primarily by unhoused neighbors. And then also, do we work with the hospital to make this space really become an alternative space for staff and for patients, parents in need, to encourage people to get out there with a coffee cart, or just as an alternative to being in the hospital or walking under the freeway to Temescal during the day?
Thanks, Danny.
Yeah.
Group 2.
I'm muted, sorry. I'm going to take that on for the group. I'll try to be brief. We talked about some similar ideas, a lot of interest in food and coffee, something that both will encourage people to stop and make it a bit more of a destination, and also populate the space with people, because having people there makes it feel more safe. And also, if it's not a place to buy food, a place you'd want to come and eat food. And then we also talked about other amenities that could be there. Like, this is a very pedestrian focused and cycling focused community right around here. People live there because they want to be traveling that way. So thinking about amenities for cyclists and pedestrians, like bike stations, ways to pump up your bike, water fountains, dog waste bins, and waste bins. Keeping the place clean was another item people wanted to focus on. And then there was a lot of talk about, similar to the last group, making West Street a slow street, or doing whatever we can to make it safer and less vehicular focused and more pedestrian oriented. Keeping sight lines. Yes, traffic calming measures generally. I'm trying to be brief. And then lighting, maintaining the space as a clean space, a variety of experiences, generally trying to get rid of that idea that this is like you're either in this space or outside of it. Making it possibly more of a space maybe instead of taking the sidewalk, you're actually diverted through the park. And it kind of encourages you to move through the space. And trying to be brief. I think that covers most of it. Is there any key points anyone wanted to add from my group? Yeah.
Group 3.
Now, if you could put up our note, perfect. All right. Not too different than what's already been said, but I think the overarching thing was that it'd be multifunctional. So it could be a dog park, a space for kids, for parents, community members, just whoever wants to go there, and having kind of separated and differing spaces for those kinds of things. So that could be the farm stand, the seating arrangements, and making sure they're arranged in a way that is conducive to socializing. A lot of our stuff was more about like the design and fluidity of it all. So question number 2 will make the space feel more comfortable. Again, with the line of sight. Also, we talked about shrubbery and kind of the materials that make it feel comfortable and safe. The 2 to 3 feet wall, so kids can't fall over it, things like that, and making it not feel closed off, but still feel safe. And this kind of plays into the next one as well, but using bright colors, like to make it inviting, instead of kind of like cold and off-putting. Obviously lighting, again, with the line of sight. And just making sure there's enough durable and like practical material is used because of things like cleaning and maintenance, and trying to avoid that as much as possible. Maybe it's checkerboard tables, there's a picnic area, and then a yoga area, so then people can use the same space but for different functions. And theme throughout all of these questions that is sort of mentioned here, but the last one is like, once we get to the historical elements in the next breakout room, just really preserving the community. So if it ends up, the first question was, if it's a food truck, we should prioritize like women of color and a specific food truck was mentioned that used to be around there and then got moved. So yeah, things like that. Or if we end up putting murals up, making sure it's a community artist. So just like really making sure the community shines through, even in the design elements of it. Yeah, I think that was it for my group. Unless anyone has any extra thoughts.
Well, those were all like had similarities, and then there was nuances and differences. But what I'm hearing is like, we want to like calm the traffic in multiple ways, and we want to like make it a multifunctional space with zones and have places to play and an anchor to pull people there. Aurora and I will go through all of this. I just loved all of the ideas I just heard. And the great thing about Zoom is this is all recorded, so we can go through it again if we like, oh, we missed something. So we're going to take all these ideas and we're going to put them into some sort of plan that pulls from and builds from the 2015 plans and thinks about these ideas and thinks about the opportunities that we have with the 2 street paving projects. And we'll come up with something that we can show to you in our next meeting, which will be in March. Now, for the next part of tonight, what we're going to do is Aurora's going to present what we've found out about the site based on the 2015 work, as well as reading Temescal Legacies, a book about the neighborhood, and doing some site research. And we're going to do it. She's going to do a brief presentation of that. And then we're going to go back into breakout rooms, because getting the community feel and understand for us is really important for when we're doing the design. So for anybody who wants to give us input on sort of the existing culture, the history, and you've got some information, we'd love to hear it. And that will be the second breakout room. And then that will be the end of the meeting. So I'm going to share my screen and Aurora's going to present.
Let's not forget to unmute. All right, so let's talk about cultural history. First, we couldn't talk about Bay Area history without mentioning Ohlone people, and more particularly the sorry, I always have a hard time saying it, Shoshenio tribe, who were the first known people to have inhabited today's Oakland. Although we do think Ohlone tribes, moved into San Francisco Bay Area around 500 CE. Human-made artifacts like the Emeryville shell mounds tell us that the Bay Area has been inhabited since for about 6,000 years. Next slide. Can you change this? Okay, thank you. So from the indigenous tribes, we're going to make a giant leap into modern history. And we'll zoom into our neighborhood, right, about Helen MacGregor Plaza. So it is located right against Martin Luther King Jr. Way, sorry for my accent, which was previously known as Grove Street. And that's where racial discriminatory practices like the redlining took place in the 1930s. So what this means is that it was nearly impossible for African Americans to purchase homes and establish businesses east of Grove Street, which is again now Grove Street, MLK, I should say that. And so surrounded in this map, we can see our very plot of land, Helen MacGregor Plaza, and it was located right at the core center of these racial discriminations that took place in the earlier 20th century. So next slide. Can you change the slide, please? Thank you. So top left and bottom left picture, you can see that those were taken in the 1940s, where Oakland had many thriving districts, a little bit like smaller villages within the main town with small shops and street trains, a lot of exciting things. And then at the top right of the slide, you can see the pre-highway city grid, this map is from 1915. And so again, the circle is where Helen MacGregor Plaza is located. So in the 1950s, the project for the Grove Shafter Freeway, which is really now 24, was presented to the public. It was kind of received with apprehension and concerns, rightfully so. And then the right-of-way, unfortunately, had to push a lot of people and shops away from the area. So the first phase of the highway opened in the late 60s, and it very soon resulted in major changes in demographics and neighborhood cultures. Next slide. Lisa, next slide. I'm not sure if it's, okay, thank you. So again, Helen MacGregor Plaza is located at the core of African-American history in East Bay. So in parallel to the construction of the freeway, discrimination against African-Americans sustained not only in housing, but also in employment, education, and public services. And the arrival of the freeway only reinforced the racial divide. So in '63, the operation of the California Landmark Fair Housing Act really made it possible for African-American folks to buy homes and establish businesses on the other side of Grove Street, today's MLK. And in '65, that's when the East Bay Negro Historical Society was created. And a thing that's pretty exciting for us, for Helen MacGregor, is that the storefront was located on MLK, and the first meetings at the beginning were held at the Church of the Good Shepherd, right across the street from us. And then that same year, what I included in the bottom right of this slide is that Maury Turner, who was a West Oakland native, created the Wee Pals comic strips for the Sunday papers. So I thought it was a pretty cool little thing. And then, of course, we can't talk about the Oakland's cultural history without mentioning the Black Panther Party. The headquarters was located in West Oakland. Sorry, I'm forgetting something. Yeah, the first, I read in the the Temescal Legacies that the first breakfast program, free breakfast program, was held on West Street, a little bit south of the plaza. But then the original office from the Black Panthers was just a few blocks away north of the plaza. And then right behind is where Dover Park is. So top right on this slide. And this is where we took this picture with Lisa. So I don't know if you can read through the sign, but essentially the park, which used to be a parking lot, eventually was leased by the Oakland Children's Hospital, and it was turned with neighbors into a public space with, into a park with a community garden, and it's related to the Black Panthers. I think that's it for now, the history. So we can get into breakout room. Yes.
So what we've got 3 really basic questions, but if anyone has any history or knows somebody that knows history, or you want to share anything about the existing culture or have ideas on how to bring the culture into the plaza, that's what this breakout group is focused on. So we'll go back into our breakout groups. It'll be a little bit of a shorter time, and then we'll come back right before 7:30 so that we can wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody's here. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I know January is sometimes a hard time to get motivated at the end of the day to do something else in the evening. I hopped around in the groups, and I felt like every group had just such great conversations going on in both breakout rooms 1 and 2, and excited to pick up on all the input you guys have given us and refine the design. And the plan is, like Liz was saying at the beginning, that we'll have another meeting in March where we're going to show you what we've taken, how we've taken your ideas and tried to put it into a site program, as well as a layout of like, this is where this could be and that's where that could be, to hopefully address the majority, if not everything that everybody's been talking about that fits within the budget and code. So big thank you to everybody. And we'll be sending out dates when we get closer to March. We haven't purposely picked a date yet because with Omicron and everything, we're like, we could pick a date and it just kind of might shift. So we're just going to go with the flow. We're going to take all these good vibes. We're going to work on the design, and Abby will get back to you with a date a couple of weeks out so that you guys have a heads up before the meeting. Thanks so much again. And if you have more thoughts, just feel free to tag us and send us some information. And then if all the facilitators can stay on, it'd be great.
And I'd like to reiterate the thanks for everybody coming and participating and sharing your great ideas. It's really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
And everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Lisa, would it be helpful if we continued recording this facilitator conversation, or do you want me to stop the recording now?
We could do that because there might be some other things that are captured. That's
Okay.
fine by me.
Great, I'll keep it recorded.
Unless somebody feels like they'd rather have it off, I'm fine with it on. Thank you so much, facilitators. We've got
5023715.
Can you mute her, Abby?
Yes, sorry.
No, she's locked.
Yeah, oh, there we go. And I can also remove her too. Thank
Okay.
you for joining us.
Anyway, I went in the rooms and everybody looked like they were doing a great job facilitating. Aurora and I are going to take all of this stuff and we might come back to questions with you if that's okay as we start to do the design. And I just want to thank you again for your facilitation and hope that you might do it again next time. And before we leave, wondering if you had any thoughts or other ideas after going through this tonight, based on what you heard from your group.
My big thing is only in this last breakout group, someone had mentioned, like it might be a little challenging for us personally to have maybe some of the longer historical context, but if there's a way to reach out to the community via like either direct mail thing for people who aren't quite as skilled online, and yeah, for like a much bigger outreach, because that might be a better way to engage members who don't even know this meeting's happening. And then finding much better like historical context.
Good point. I really wish we could be in person and like
knock on doors and yeah,
meet at the church or something, yeah. Any other thoughts or comments? Well, if we could all just hold hands and say, awesome job. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah.
Good job. It was all very positive. Which
there we go, Annie.
Got all my fears away. So.
Thank you, Val.
Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Care. Bye.
Bye.